Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Janice Levine. Pronouns are she, her, and I'm a senior program officer at the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation. I know quite a few on the call. Those of you I don't know, I hope I get to know you soon, whether it's in the Zoom space or in person in the future. I just want to thank you all for being here today and want to begin this session by grounding us and acknowledging the traditional territory we are on of the Puyallup and Coast Salish lands. With permission, I invite us all to watch the Puyallup Tribe's land acknowledgement video and honor the space we gather on today. Even though we're virtual, we're all in our physical spaces. We also encourage you to check out Native Land to learn more about the lands that we inhabit, the history of those lands, and how we can actively be part of a better future together. Joe?
It is the land right here that the Puyallup people have lived on since the beginning. This right here is where we are in the world, our homeland.
We work on our ancestral lands. We raise our children who go to school on the land of the Puyallup people. We acknowledge that the Medicine Creek Treaty was signed for the whites to take our land for their benefit.
Land was assigned to our people. The Caucasians said, "This is your land," and they took that land from us too. Our land was stolen from us. Treaties were broken.
But we are still here today. Our people forage for food and materials, we pick berries, we canoe, we practice our traditional ways, and we speak Toshuti.
Just as our ancestors did. We are finished.
All right, thank you, everyone. I see more folks joining the call. Thank you for being here. I know we're trying to work on so many things. There's lots happening right now. I just want to say, though, too, to make this virtual session possible, we all know how much it takes to do things on Zoom. I want to acknowledge all the wonderful GCCF staff that are on this call that are helping make this possible. They each got their own roles and doing lots of things. I'd also like to recognize the Pierce County Connected committee members that are on this call. I see quite a few of you. Additionally, our breakout room hosts that will be facilitating the conversations in the small groups once we break out to that. You know who you are, and I want to thank you so much in advance for your time and just hosting that space. And for our elected officials on the call, I see you, Tawana, Senator Nobles. I love saying that every time, and whenever I hear it, it gives me goosebumps. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. For today's meeting, we'll be chatting about vaccine equity and access and hearing from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department and Multi-Care about the county-wide plan and their roles in our community and ways to partner and collaborate. And so now I actually want to hand it over to Senator Nobles for some words on what is at stake in our community. Thank you, Senator Nobles.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tawana Nobles. I'm not only the senator for the 29th Legislative District, but I am the president and CEO of the Tacoma Urban League. And we've been working tremendously hard as an urban league. And of course, I've tried to do what I can as a legislator, creating policy and also providing funding in our community so that we can fight back against COVID-19. And as we know, this past year has absolutely been hard on all of us, and between living day to day and not knowing how to protect ourselves from COVID-19, being isolated from family and friends and not knowing when life would return to normal, it has felt like we lost a year of our lives. But what we have been getting across to our community is that the end is in sight. We are well on our way to getting our lives back on track, and researchers from across the globe, including many who look like me and many of you on this call, they've spent months developing and testing a vaccine to protect us from COVID-19 and to keep us from spreading it on to others. And I asked our friends over at the health department to just give me a little information about, you know, the scene of and the landscape of COVID-19 here in our community. I know at Tacoma Urban League, we are doing our part to be innovative, to provide incentives and food, and to host vaccine clinics and to get the word out about the importance of vaccines. We actually have our second vaccine clinic on June 2nd. But we know that over 1/3 of Pierce County residents have started vaccination, and over 1/4 are fully vaccinated. But there still are a lot of folks who are concerned, and they're not embracing the vaccine with open arms. So we want to make sure that we are doing our part as a community to think innovatively, to share via TV, social media, podcasts, billboards, signs on buses, whatever we can in our community to reach folks and tell them about the vaccine and express the safety of the vaccine. We also have, just like the health department does, we in the Urban League family have a great resource that can be shared with our Black and Brown community members that breaks down a lot of the frequently asked questions about the vaccine. But we want to make sure that folks who have concerns, you know, about themselves or family members or the impacts, that we as a community play our part as community organizations and individuals to get accurate information out about the vaccine and the importance of getting vaxxed now. And I just want to encourage everyone, no matter where folks are, where they live, to just try to respond positively around the COVID vaccine, to also just use common sense in the ways that we are keeping ourselves safe, to listen to the information that the health department is providing, and to dispel any myths. So I'm so proud that our health department has provided over 25,000 doses of vaccines here in Pierce County, and just really grateful for staff, especially the staff who have helped us to stand up our vaccine clinics at Tacoma Urban League, and staff who continue to educate our state legislature on, you know, the numbers and the work that we need to do, and the reasons why or why not folks are being vaccinated. But we are doing a good job. The end is in sight. We just have to continue to do our part as community members and being trusted messengers, trusted resources throughout our county and our cities. And so I will do my part. I am fully vaccinated. My 14-year-old daughter has had one of her doses and will go back next week for her second dose. I'm still doing some convincing of my 16-year-old son, and so at his pace when he's ready, but I'm doing my part to work with him as well, and just extending that to our community. But I just want to encourage you all and thank you for being folks on the ground who are doing this work and helping to keep our community safe. So thank you, and thank you to Greater Tacoma Community Foundation for giving me a little bit of time on the agenda, and just cheers to all of you, and keep up the hard work.
Thank you so much, Tawana. You know, you've been mobilizing community for years, and I know you are someone that I look up to as a mentor, you know, in community, and so appreciate you just being in this space today as well. You know, and so now what I'd like to do is introduce our wonderful GTCF's wonderful president and CEO that many of you know, Kathy Littman, to share some more words. Kathy?
Hey, thanks guys. And I don't know if I was the only one that was a little wonky in getting in. Technology is wonderful, but it certainly takes a whole village to make it work. So we're just granting each other gracious space while we figure all of this out, I think. But yeah, welcome and thank you for joining this aligned effort to improve access and participation in the COVID-19 vaccine. You know, over the past several years, GTCF has learned how gathering with community and organizations with trusted relationships can accelerate and amplify transformative work across Pierce County. We've seen firsthand, no organization can do it alone. Today, we'll be listening and learning with one another about the barriers to vaccine participation, and also the values that can help people make an informed choice about getting the COVID vaccine. I think we ought to pause just for a minute and celebrate the fact that we have the vaccines. We have pop-up sites. We have the ability to do this. And folks, we couldn't have said that 6, 7 months ago. We have made amazing progress. And so now it's about transforming the will and the hearts of people to see how this is caring for each other, not just caring for ourselves. You know, we've recently been in conversation with some of our colleagues over in Yakima about their efforts to improve vaccine equity. And I just want to highlight some of the things that really stuck with me when I listened to the folks over in Yakima that were doing this work. Jim Waldo, Vice President over at Gordon Thomas Honeywell in Tacoma, was really central to bringing a broad community partnership together. And he said, our success in Yakima has been completely reliant upon grassroots efforts. It is neighbors and leaders calling and talking to one another, word of mouth, and being able to get vaccinated at a place that they know and trust, allowing each family member within multi-generational families to receive it all at once. We listened to the community, and they knew exactly how to reach out to each other. Other leaders in Yakima told us we can't have a one-size-fits-all approach or message when it comes to vaccination for the community as a whole. We listened to the community, and they knew exactly how to reach out to each other. It should be a choice individuals can make with good information and with trusted people so they can discuss their options. For many people in Yakima, the most effective message about the vaccine was, here is how you can help supporting your community. And it's giving everybody the authority and the ownership over the well-being of the group. And it's not just about any one person. What we're asking from you today is to help all of us here to learn more about what it takes in Pierce County communities to help people make a choice with good information from trusted people. The folks that work in your networks, in your wheelhouse, trust you. That's why you're here. We need you, and we're in a partnership with you. We want to support you in adding this message to your communities about being healthy and thriving, which is what you get up every day and work toward. The greatest value for all of us who care about building a thriving Pierce County is community knowledge. I am really looking forward to learning together with all of you, and thank you so much for your commitment to doing this work. Janice, I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. You know, we all have been doing community work for so long, and, you know, especially around COVID-19 and everything else. When it comes to vaccines, we know there are 2 major agencies that are helping get those shots in people's arms. I get my 2nd dose next week. I'm a little behind, but, you know, we know Tacoma Pierce County Health Department and Multi-Care, and so grateful to have folks from both of those institutions on the call. You know, all of us are here today because of trusted relationships and knowledge about our community. You know, each of you know what your community needs to know and what barriers they face to getting the COVID-19 vaccine and everything else in between that we've dealt with over the last year and beyond. In a few moments, we'll break out into small breakout rooms, you know, to talk about what we've seen, what our community is saying, and what ideas you have about supporting people and making their choice about the COVID-19 vaccine. Multi-Care and the health department will join these conversations, sharing their own lessons and insights. They'll also share after how their resources and systems can better serve our community, and take your questions and suggestions for getting more people engaged with the vaccination. So we'll head off to the breakout rooms here shortly. Each of those rooms will be hosted by 2 facilitators. Each breakout room will have its own Jamboard page to take notes on. If you haven't gone over Jamboard, we're about to, don't worry. So we're going to do a quick overview on that. So Al, if you can please share those slides so I can just share that real quick. And you will be getting a link in the chat for these Jamboard slides as well. All right. So they should be getting a link in the chat with the Jamboard slides. And so you can join that and you'll start to see, we all get these like little funny names. I love it. There's like anonymous chipmunk, anonymous anteater when we're on this Jamboard page. So what you'll see as you're using Jamboard, there's a bunch of different slides here if you haven't. What you're going to want to do is click on this little sticky note right here. And so you can actually do that when you're on this page and we'll start to see these auto fill in. So I'm going to click a sticky note. Hello, everyone. And you can practice there. And then you type it in, you can change the color if you want, and then you hit save. And it's going to start saving all these little sticky notes. And that's what we're going to ask that you utilize when you're in these breakout rooms. And so in your small group, next slide, please, Al, we're going to take about 20-25 minutes to just, talk with each other. There's some questions that are going to be posted on those pages. You're going to enter a breakout room, and that's going to be the page that you're going to join. Each of those pages are going to have your group number, which is your breakout room number. It'll have your host, who's hosting the space, and then the questions. And so then as you're talking, just feel free to add those sticky notes. Before we jump in there, I'm going to have Senior Program Officer Megan Smedzard explain a little icebreaker activity that you all will do to help start the space once you go into your breakout rooms. Megan?
Thank you. All right. Anastasia, if you could pull up the image of the feelings chart in the Jamboard, just so people know what I'm referencing, that'll be helpful. Hi, I'm Megan Smedzard. I am also a Senior Program Officer here at the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation. I wanted to share a practice that we have been doing as part of the whole child work that GTCF has been engaged in for the last decade. Many of you may have been in meetings where you've talked about or heard about the importance of social emotional learning. This is something that we care about deeply in Tacoma, and across many youth organizations, we are centering our work in this. Today, when you get into your breakout rooms, you are going to do a quick social emotional learning activity with each other. The image on the screen that you're seeing here is a feelings wheel, and it offers a really great wealth of vocabulary around our emotions. This is what you are going to reference when you're in your breakout rooms, and you choose 1 to 3 feelings words that describe how you're feeling today, and then take a few minutes just to talk with each other about why you chose those words. I think there's a lot of really important reasons that we do this to start our meetings, but one of them is that the work that you are all doing in community is inherently emotional, and you bring your emotions to the work and to the spaces that we gather in partnership. And I think by sharing our feelings and being honest about how we're feeling, we can have deeper, richer partnerships and be our more authentic selves. And that is a really valuable thing when we're doing work that is as important as vaccine equity, in addition to all the other things that you're doing in the rest of your professional and personal lives. So I'm excited to give you a few minutes to do this in your breakout rooms. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a chat. I am always happy to talk about SEL and feelings. So if you need anything, please let me know.
Thank you, Megan. All right, now we're about to go through the Zoom portal that we know to those breakout rooms. So Joe, if you can please send people off to the breakout rooms for the questions that we've got that will be covered. And so we're just going to have you talk about a couple different things, but as we know, you're free to talk about anything. That's okay. We know conversations can go every which way. And so what we do have are what are experiences you've had recently around vaccine issues with community? What does vaccine access and convenience look like for your organization and community? Who do people listen to and trust? What are access issues? What are convenience issues? All right, enjoy those conversations, and we'll see you in about 20 minutes or so, 20-25 minutes. Hi, Miss Alana, how are you? Hi, Mary Beth. Hi, Holly. Hi, Ariel.
Hi, Janice. So good to see you.
Ooh, aren't Zoom meetings so fun, everybody? I hope y'all had some good dialogue, good conversation. I was kind of going through the sticky notes. Lots going on. It's awesome. I love it. We'll just wait a couple more seconds till everyone comes back through the Zoom vortex. All right. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. I know it was, we had a plan, and you know what? The plan just didn't happen, and you all were awesome, and you just winged it, and you had some great dialogue. So thanks, everyone. Apologize to our host. You're like, what happened? I'm not in the right room. But just thank you, everyone, for just winging it and making it work and having great dialogue anyway. So we're just going to go through real quick. And just each group, if you just want to share like one thing, what we're going to do after this, though, is you're going to get a recording of this meeting. You're also going to get a copy of the Jamboard in a PDF form, and we're going to share out, you know, the resources, everything that's being shared from the health department, and we'll be sending that out after. So if you just want to share, like, what's one thing y'all talked about, a little overview from each group. I will start with group 1. I believe you were in that group, Troy. Yes, you will definitely get copies of all the Jamboards, Holly.
Yeah, well, I'll speak. So I know we took notes on group 6, which I think was our original group, but we'll go, I'm happy to report as group 1 since Troy's doing the meeting from a car. So, so you have to go to 6 to get our notes, actually, which we had a very thoughtful discussion. And as you can see, we had lots of awesome feedback. And it's really hard to, I'm going to just say one of the things that really bubbled up was just that there's no one experience, right? So people have hesitancies around the vaccine for a lot of different reasons. And another thing that came up a lot for us in our conversations was, in addition to barriers like language and transportation, that the sense of feeling welcome and trust is a big deal, and that can translate into word of mouth and referrals to other family friends who maybe haven't looked into getting the vaccine yet. So yeah, grateful for our discussion. We had a great talk.
Thank you, Holly. How about group 2? Or if you were in a different room, that's okay too.
Hi, I will speak on behalf of group 2. We had members from various organizations. We had one organization that really works with underhoused and folks experiencing houselessness. And so some key aspects there were simple knowledge of availability, not knowing that the vaccine is free, and finding vaccines in places that are naturally part of someone's environment, like where they naturally congregate. We also had a group member who is part of the ministerial coalition. Forgive me if I'm misspeaking, but that was a really key place, providing pop-ups with that coalition, where that group really is a trusted voice. Especially religious communities are places of belonging and places of trust. That was a key point. And a common question that several of us experienced was, why should I get the vaccine if it has not been out very long, or it hasn't been tested, or whatever those conceptions may be? Learning how to address that question with factual information and in a compassionate way. I think those are the main things. One other aspect was just that personal connection that makes a big difference. Like someone saying, well, what vaccine did you get? And how did you feel about it? I heard my sister got such and such. So those personal points of connection make all the difference. That's it for group 2.
Thank you so much for sharing that out, Marissa. How about group 3?
I can go for group 3. So we had a great conversation, and I think there were a few key things that really stuck out to me. The first thing that came up was language access issues, and that, the health department has done a great job of having Spanish information on the website, but then when you navigate away from the website to schedule an appointment with a place like Walgreens or a different pharmacy, they might not actually be able to complete scheduling the appointment because those third-party websites are not being translated and don't have the translated services that the health department has, and so that can be a huge barrier to people. And then we also talked about demographic barriers and barriers facing the BIPOC community, and a lack of, or people not having trust necessarily in a medical provider that isn't the same background as them, especially because we know that there's so much of a bad history in this country of the medical community causing a lot of harm to Black folks and a lack of trust there. And then also when people are being asked demographic information, if there isn't that foundation of trust when people are being asked that information, it feels invasive and not like something they want to answer. And so that can be a barrier too. If there's anybody that in my group that wants to correct if I didn't interpret your feelings correct or what you shared correctly, please feel free to chime in too.
Thank you, Claire. And I also saw, like, I see the offer incentives to get people a vaccine. Like, I know APCC and Urban League, they've been like, hey, we're going to give you like $25 gift card. Here's this and that. And I love seeing those creative ways. How about group 4?
I guess I'll speak up for group 4. I'm Christine Coleman with Hilltop Action Coalition. One of the things that we talked about, which I hadn't really thought about before, was site specifics to help people when they get to an actual vaccine location. It's like they're kind of expected to know what to do because the people that are there running it, you know, they're doing it hundreds and hundreds of times, and people come up in their car or whatever means that they have to access the site. So that was important, site specifics. We also touched on data and how it's being presented, how the data is constantly changing, where people are getting vaccinated, so we can have more positive statistics out there to hopefully encourage people who are a little fearful to get vaccinated. Another thing we talked about was the influence of our elders' knowledge on the community and how, for instance, a grandmother could encourage a grandson to take a vaccine, whereas maybe before that they were completely against it based on correct and incorrect knowledge. And I think I might have gotten everything, but if I didn't, if somebody else from my group wants to speak up, that would be really great. I think one last thing we noticed was that in the beginning, when vaccines came out, a lot of people were signing up. People were getting flooded. You couldn't get an appointment. You had to really look hard to get a vaccine. And whereas now they're having to encourage people to come in, and there's open slots and all that kind of stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think especially that site specifics one, like the instructions, like what do you do when you get there? Because I know like when I went to get my shot, I was like, where do I go? Like there wasn't a sign. And then when you go in, like, do you go to the front desk? Do you not, you know, or if you're in your car, you know what that looks like. And even the same for when you're getting tested, you know, like it's that's so important. Thank you for bringing that up. How about group 5?
So we had, you know, great conversation. A lot of what we talked about has already been shared, but I think that some of the things that really stood out that were really themes was just the importance of having simple, clear data that shows that there are no harmful effects from the vaccines, and then having that put out by a trusted source of information. So one of our participants used like medical professionals within their community to actually relay kind of questions that had come up about the content of the vaccine or just the most common objections that they had heard, and then kind of had medical professionals be the ones to kind of put out the answers to the questions that people had been asking. A lot of hesitancy around vaccines, but some of it by political party. And so one of the things that we talked about is finding prominent Republicans who would endorse vaccines on social media and maybe on local media, local television. That idea of just having it come out from someone you trust. So a trusted Republican leader would be really important. And then on the other side, having young people also be ambassadors, maybe who have gotten COVID. So this kind of strong sense that maybe young people don't think that they need the vaccine, a lot of hesitancy for them, but having people who have gotten COVID become ambassadors on social media for the vaccine is one of the things our group suggested that would be really helpful. And just, I invite anybody else from number 5 to jump in if there's something critical you think I missed.
Thanks, Robin. And I also see in the chat, Holly mentioned around language and approaches to provide information and support preferred by elders in person or younger ages, social media. So important on that aspect too. And I know there's another group, I think our numbers just got a little wonky, but I believe it's like Marcy, Marilee, that group.
Yeah, we posted a little bit in group 3, even though we were group 1. So I think we posted it in several places. So I'll just share a couple of points and then invite anybody from the group who wants to add in. I think one of the things that we talked about was just using, trusted messengers. And in the case of like Tacoma Ministerial Alliance, there's some discussion about using things like Facebook Live sessions, where people already are, for the Pierce County AIDS Foundation, that's case managers, who have a lot of trust, and sometimes in rural communities that can be medical providers, like other folks talked about. So just really trying to find where those trusted relationships are for that messaging. And let's see what else. Yeah, I think I'll that in a nutshell. And then I don't know, does anybody else from our group, which was 1/3, have anything important that you want to add?
Marcy, this is Marilee, and hello everyone. Yes, you'll find our ideas sprinkled on everybody else's Jamboard. So hey, it's going to be fun, right? Reading our comments. But one thing that we did out in the Sumner Bonnie Lake area for our Communities for Families Coalition, and I talked about this in our group, was we actually did this. We broke our 25-30 member group into 5 small groups and just had those thoughtful discussions. And the #1 issue coming out of all 5 groups was that people don't know what the vaccine is. They don't know what happens when you put it in their body. And that we're past the early adopter stage. If you look at behavior change, the earlier adopters have gotten the vaccine. Now we're in the middle. We have people in our community that are just dead set against this vaccine and are being very, very, very loud about that it's experimental and very, very much tied to conservative politics. But we've got a golden opportunity to reach the people in the middle, but we have to do it with good education. It's not only about access, it's not only about where the clinics are, right? Even though everything that everyone has said plays into it, it's really about what that vaccine does in your body and having that message delivered by credible medical professionals, and that message getting out. So we are actually, one tiny way of addressing this is that we're going to be using some grant money to help pay for an ARNP in our community who already has done a great vaccine presentation but has to redo it because of the Johnson & Johnson issues, right? She's going to redo that, and we'll post it on our district website, make that available for our 1,200 employees at the district as well as the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilee and Marcy and Luis. I loved your comment, Holly. You also mentioned about time of day too. I've seen a lot of vaccine sites are like 8 to 4, 8 to 5, and that's hard. Not everyone can get there. Luis, our communities trust us and send them to vaccine providers with the highest care and empathy. But as the process and sites are being scaled up and availability increases, how do we keep up and trust that the vaccine providers are not going to break our trust? Availability of vaccines is great, but increased availability of community connected and sensitive providers. Thank you for sharing that 100%. I wrote in the chat on that too. And how do we make that more sustainable and collaborative long beyond the vaccine? All right, folks. Lots been happening. I appreciate each of you. We're going to take about 3 minutes here, come back at 2:10, take a little break, refill your tea, your coffee, whatever you need, do a little dance. Joe's going to play some more jazz music, and we'll see you in 3 minutes. All right, DJ Joe, thank you for that wonderful jazz music. We're going to come back. Hopefully you were able to get a little break from the Zoom screens that we are on all day. So now I'd like to hand it over to Marcy Boulay and Gabe Moali'i. I'm so sorry, Gabe, I totally butchered that. I was like, I had it written down. I was like, I'm going to say it right. And I butchered your last name, Moali'i. Okay. Marcy and Gabe, thank you both so much from Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. Unfortunately, Multicare was not able to join us today, but they are phenomenal and have been working together with many of you in community. So I'm going to hand it over to them. Thank you both.
Sure. I'm Gabe Moali'i with the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. Thank you for the introduction. I'm our Chief Equity Officer and overseeing our vaccine strategy for our response. And man, there's so much I could say. So I'm trying to really like pick the notes and, and some key takeaways I think for you guys is, you're very aligned with how we're thinking about what we need to do to make sure we have equitable access to vaccine. Me and Marcy were some of the people that were first activated in our public health response. This is my first pandemic. It's our first emergency response. And part of the reasons why we were activated was because of our relationships in community and because of our work with many of you, and we knew how important that was going to be to this response, and we've just kind of built it out since then. And a lot of it is learning as we go, but like what you guys have mentioned, how do we share accurate information? Who's trusted in community? How do we decrease access barriers? And also knowing that, some of this work for us, equity work, inequities and racial injustices existed before the pandemic. They've been created from systems and policies and, what we call like social, economic, environmental conditions for health that have just in some ways made it harder for some people during this pandemic and less protection for many of our communities, and specifically our BIPOC communities and those with other, resource access issues. So when we look at how we deliver, equity and vaccine, we also think about like, well, how do we come out of this pandemic stronger and, really build on the work that we're doing to, at least not harm relationships, but if not repair them, because a lot of the work that we do is based on those trusted relationships. So with that, really what of our focus right now is kind of what a lot of you mentioned is like, who are those, how do we equip our trusted community partners and trusted messengers in the communities with what they need to have those conversations. There's not really a one size fits all right now for communities. And so we're at that stage of how do we tailor messages and resources and access for different communities. So we really are relying on, this team, and we have our own partners, our contracted outreach partners that we are starting a training for next week. So we also at the health department are funding what we call like outreach workers or community health workers or vaccine ambassadors. You've kind of heard them all mentioned a little bit, but it's all the same. It's basically outreach campaign. Like, how do we get people on the ground connecting with communities, the resources they need, the tools they need, the messages they need. And with that, I know we don't have a lot of time, so I want to spend some time on questions, but I did want to invite all of you to a training. So we are launching a little bit more in-depth training next week, next Friday, and some of you are already on that training. It's a kind of a 3-part training on, basics around COVID and the COVID vaccine, how to have conversations around the vaccine. So, how do you actually have harder conversations or conversations that, in your communities around vaccine, and then how do you actually access vaccine? So what does that look like? How do you navigate appointments? Where do you find them? How do you find trusted places to get vaccine? How do you find different vaccines? So that we'll make sure you guys have that invite as well. Marcy, do you have anything to add or any questions from the group?
Yeah, just a bit. Thanks. I guess the other thing, just to thank you all. I mean, we talked a little bit in our small group, but we are so appreciative of all of the wisdom, expertise, relationships that you all hold. And it's really comforting to know that, that we can, support one another in this work. I know it's been long and exhausting. And I know another thing we talked about in our group was, what are those other pieces around resiliency and employment, and what new things have people done that bring joy? What are some of the good that's come out of this as well? So we just really appreciate all of you in this partnership. I mean, truly, Janice from GTCF to everyone across the board, and just are really excited to work with you over the next couple of months as as we think about how to be more creative and keep pivoting for all the new things that keep coming our way. So just appreciation all across the board.
And one of the things I was thinking, just because I know we have a few different like tangible resources. So we have like some toolkits in the works, and we have a trusted messenger campaign is maybe working with Janice, and we have like a weekly roundup about all of our resources and questions and things like that. So maybe just working with Janice to give you guys kind of a robust, summary of here's the different things different tools or messages that you guys can access. Because one of the things that I've heard in multiple groups is that, with us right now, we're actually in a place where there's not a whole new information coming out about COVID. Like we're not dealing with the phases and the eligibility, and there's not new vaccines coming online. So it's a lot about getting that information to communities. And that's really a lot of our work right now, is how do we get what we have to people, because that's really some work of the health department that we haven't done in the first part of it, because everything was changing so much. And now it's like, well, how do we actually get that information to people? And you're, the people that's going to be some of our key people to do that work.
Thank you, Gabe. Thank you, Marcy. Does anyone have any questions? We were talking about this before this meeting. We didn't want it to be like another data, here's the numbers meeting. We really wanted it to be a conversation in this space. And, these two are so phenomenal. And so I sent them a message and they're like, boom, and I don't know when they sleep with all the work that they do in our community. This is the time to just ask questions, give praise as well, because they are, them and their team are doing some awesome work. So please feel free. Anything is on the table right now.
Great.
So yeah, I mean, I wanted to echo and just thank everyone who is just doing an amazing job, especially at the health department. I forgot to mention this in a small group. I think one thing that is actually adding to the confusion around the vaccine, and it really shouldn't, is kind of the changing guidelines around the masks. So it's like, I think a lot of people are like taking these two unrelated issues and they're conflating it to like make it seem like there's less sound evidence on vaccines, which is kind of like silly and ridiculous, but it's like, so I don't know if there's a way that, there can be kind of consistent messaging around the masks, because I think it's kind of getting in the way of our messaging.
Yeah, masking right now is a big thing. I mean, we've been trying to figure out how to message that, and it is complicated because it's not a one size fit all on how to interpret it, and there's difference between employers and employees and clients, and so we also are navigating that even with our own staff, right? And so we're open to kind of what's resonating with your communities, but yeah, we're actually feeling that confusion in a acute way as well. And how we show up as a health department in our community is, something we're also kind of navigating too. We did post a blog about masking. I think it went out yesterday, so I'll find the link and put it to that. That's kind of some of our newest messaging around how we're talking about masking. So I'll make sure you guys have that as a resource. And what I say too is, again, I know a lot of our stuff's online and we're still working on our language access, but what I see sometimes is our blogs and, like our blogs and our posts are messaging. So for me, it's not just like the blog, but it's like, what is the messaging in the blog and how can I use that in my conversations? So that's kind of one way that we can help be consistent.
We'll make sure I'll gather those resources from Gabe and Marcy and from Multicare as well for their resources and ensure that you all have that. There was a question I saw in the chat too from Holly, just about folks are getting advice from doctors to wait till later in the summer to get vaccinated. Any thoughts on that?
So my first thought would be it'd be nice to, not without calling anybody out, it would be nice to know who some of those providers are, because we have staff that their job is to work with providers. And so if there's some specific people that you're hearing about that, we could just kind of have a conversation with and to understand where they're coming from, that maybe we can, I don't know what else we could do, but I'm assuming that's probably not across the board. And so maybe a one-on-one conversation might be helpful there with folks who already have relationships with those providers. So if you're willing to share, we'd be happy to follow up.
This is Prentice Johnson. I do know there are some doctors, depending on their medical condition, has asked them to wait to see, just to see how things go. But other than that, I've not heard it as being quite a number of people. I just heard maybe one or two or a few people that may have had that kind of conversation with their doctor.
Thank you, Prentice. Susan, I see you got your hand raised. Susan Paganelli.
Yep, thank you. We had a question today about getting teenagers vaccinated, and I just kind of assumed that when they opened it up to younger people that most of the clinics would have it, but according to one of our providers, they called a local pharmacy and they said, no, we're not giving it to anybody younger. And so she was having trouble. So is that just kind of a one-off, or are there difficulties right now finding clinics for that teenager where the vaccination providers are hesitant to give it to teenagers?
So I'm just coming back off of vacation, being fully transparent. So Gabe might add in, but Susan, one of the things we're doing is partnering with all school districts across Pierce County between the health department and Department of Emergency Management to offer vaccine clinics for kiddos. And those are just beginning, and those will really, in the case of most districts, will look to have not just the first but the second dose at least sometime through June. And so what we can do is follow up with you specifically for Peninsula School District to make sure that you know when those dates are. But so our staff are working directly with school personnel, but it's important for partners to know that too. So again, it's just bridging another piece. So I'll just chat somebody right now and find out when your specific dates are.
Okay, great, thanks. And I see there's an answer too in the thing. So thank you.
Janice, this is Mary Lee, and so it's still open for questions. So I'm turning to Gabe and to Marcy again from the health department. So one of the things now, one of the messages that we're having to combat is that we had a very vocal parent go on KTTH on a talk show with another parent, and this parent is a paramedic for East Pierce Fire and Rescue. And she talked about how she has worked dozens of clinics having to be on standby with a van, which we're so appreciative, right? On the incredible organization of the clinics, whether or not they're emergency management or the health department. Boy, we can all learn how to organize, right? But she's part of that response team. And she said that, quote unquote, at every single clinic that she has had to respond to reactions from the vaccines and has had to take somebody to the hospital. And I'm struggling, a lot of us were struggling with that, but then she went on to talk about how the reactions have included cardiac arrest, heart symptoms, and paralysis. And I guess it would be really interesting to know from the health department, from your pop-up vaccine clinics or from Department of Emergency Management, is that truthful? I mean, maybe it just happened where she was. I don't want to say a he said, she said kind of thing, but what kind of reactions are you seeing that paramedics have to respond to, and how many people have been transported from the clinics in Pierce County, if you have that data? Because we have that national level data about the very, very rare side effects, but how would we respond to this kind of information that's coming out of our own emergency responders groups? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say too, kind of to Marcy's earlier point, is learning a little bit more specifics, you know, and because that's the thing is people can say whatever they, you know, they have the right to their opinion and their perceptions, and there are people that can share that. From my experience internally, I haven't heard of that severe reaction. I know, and we can have one of our nurse, and that's part of our ongoing trainings, like have a nurse from our team there to be able to talk through these more medical questions, because we're not medical professionals, and, you know, there's nuances to it. I know that we did just submit a healthcare advisory for, what is it, like pericarditis? That's like inflammation of the heart that happens. And they're seeing, like, I think a few cases of it, but they're not sure if it's related to the vaccine or related to just COVID infection. And it usually shows up like 4 days after. And we actually just posted a recent blog about it. And so I don't know if that's what they're talking about. But yeah, again, like with any vaccination, there's could be, you know, adverse reactions, and people should know what a vaccine does and what it does to your body, and that people could have different reactions, right? That's just part of medical care. That's not different for COVID. It's not different for any vaccine. It's not different for anything else. And having those conversations with your medical provider is absolutely appropriate, you know, and we don't want to, you know, but I think the risk of COVID so far outweighs so much about what a vaccine can offer, that's kind of what people have to weigh, right? Like, and what we know is that we don't know what the long-term effects of COVID are. And in fact, we know people that are still suffering from COVID and that are having worse reactions to the vaccine. And right now, the protection we're seeing in the community, or when we do see more protection, is because people got vaccinated. So it's not a risk that's going away. It's going away because people are getting vaccinated. So, you know, all those kind of things go together. But yeah, so I don't have more of a specific scenario, but I haven't heard that. And I know Marcy's got like the inside provider, she's being modest, but she knows more from the insider track of someone who works with, you know, COVID patients, or, you know, vaccination stuff.
I would just add, Marilee, I think what we can do for those of you who've been vaccinated, you know, everybody's encouraged to report symptoms to that VAERS, VAERS system, so we can track. And I don't know what's available at a county level, but we can follow up and ask about that. So that, you know, that's one thing, just to encourage folks to, you know, take part in that, because we don't know if, you know, if it's underreported. You know, we don't have that data, but we're happy to share anything that we can that's not, you know, protected. So I don't know where that data exists, but I'm sure it's somewhere, and it's something we can follow up on, and just want to acknowledge, yeah, that it's not 100% risk-free. But like Gabe said, I mean, my husband has long hauler symptoms. He's a medical provider and he's had COVID and he's a long hauler. And I agree, like just that anything we can do still to encourage people, it definitely beats, you know, really severe complications and, you know, being on a respirator. So at the same time, it's not 100% risk-free. And I think we have to honestly acknowledge that, and we can follow up and get and see what data we might have.
For the record, I've had both of my vaccines, sailed through them, and I hate needles. And my child, who goes into anaphylactic shock from a number of foods, sailed through his vaccines. We are vaccinated and proud, right? But when a trusted professional who deals with anything medical and emergency response gets on the radio saying that, it just really was kind of a, you know, a gut punch. And I'm just trying to do anything I can to kind of counteract that message while still promoting all the positives, which both of you so beautifully mentioned. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Marcy and Gabe. I want to be mindful. We are at 2:30, and I know there's probably more questions, and I know that there is that training. What's the date again for that training?
It is June 4th.
June 4th, next Friday. Okay, so we'll make sure I'll connect with you, Marcy and Gabe, after this to get the link and get that sent out by tomorrow so folks can register and get some more in depth on the vaccine and that kind of information. I know I'll be attending as well. And so I just want to say thank you, everyone, for sharing this space today. By the end of next week as well, look for an email from me that's going to have this meeting recording. It's going to have some notes. It'll have a post-session survey just to get some feedback from you all. Grantees, organizations that receive funding that are on this call, you'll receive a separate email from me with information about that. We weren't going to spend this time talking about the funding. I promise it's low lift. I promise it's not going to take a lot of your time. We just want to hear from you and how we can all start working together more and collaborating and really just making this long-term sustainable and get through COVID, get through the vaccines, get through all of this and just keep working with each other. There will be a second session in the months to come. We'll confer with the health department and with multi-care and with you all to figure that out. We're not going to do it like September, right when school starts and all that kind of stuff. Don't worry. But I just want to thank you all for being on this call. And thank you so much for your time today and have a great rest of your day, everyone.